The rope bit into my wrists as I hung from the ceiling, cold water pouring over me. Samuel's furious eyes burned with anger. "You really think you can refuse me?" he shouted. Fear tightened in my chest as I struggled to breathe. My wrists ached, but I twisted desperately, praying I could break free. "Hello, my name is Rebecca, and I'm 28 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, with my 5-year-old daughter, Olivia. Sometimes, I look back and wonder how my life ended up here, in this terrifying moment. There was a time when everything felt perfect, when I thought I had a beautiful future ahead of me. But that all changed the moment Samuel revealed who he truly was. We met at a friend's party, and from the first moment, Samuel seemed like the perfect man. He was charming, funny, and full of life, and I fell for him quickly. After a year of dating, we got married, and soon after, Olivia was born. I thought we were building a family full of love, but over time, I started to notice little things. Samuel became more controlling, dismissive of my feelings, and increasingly unpredictable. What began as small frustrations soon grew into something far more dangerous. At first, it was little comments that chipped away at me. "Rebecca, can you make sure the house is spotless when I get home?" he'd say, his voice sharp and demanding. I thought he was just stressed from work, but his words carried a weight that settled heavily on my shoulders. Whenever I tried to talk about how I felt, he brushed me off, saying I was being too sensitive. I started to feel smaller and smaller in my own home. Then there was Samuel's younger sister, Laura. At 22, she was still figuring out her life, but she relied heavily on Samuel, and he indulged her every whim. "She's family," he'd say whenever I voiced my frustration. Laura treated our home like her own personal retreat, dropping by unannounced, demanding attention and care. I felt like an outsider in my own house, constantly catering to their needs while mine were ignored. The breaking point came when Samuel started gambling. At first, I didn't think it was serious, but then I found out he had lost $50,000. I was shocked. He had drained our savings and was now demanding more from me, the money I had saved for Olivia's future, for her education. But Samuel wanted it to pay off his gambling debts. I refused. I couldn't let him destroy our lives any further. That night, Samuel's anger reached a terrifying new level. When I told him no, he snapped. He grabbed a rope, tied my hands, and suspended me from the ceiling. Cold water splashed over me as he shouted, demanding that I give him the money. But I couldn't. No matter how much he tried to break me, I knew I had to protect Olivia. My body was cold, my mind racing, but through the fear, I knew I had to act quickly. I couldn't give up. I started twisting my wrists, ignoring the pain as the rope bit into my skin. I felt the knot begin to loosen, just enough for me to slip one hand free. The moment I was able to free my other hand, I fell to the floor, landing hard. My legs wobbled, but I forced myself to stand. There was no time to think about the pain. I had to find Olivia. I rushed to her room where she had been hiding. Her wide, tear-filled eyes met mine as I pulled her into my arms. "Mommy, what's happening?" she asked in a trembling voice. "We are leaving, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice shaking but determined. "We are going to be safe." I quickly grabbed a small bag, tossing in a few clothes and Olivia's favorite teddy bear. Every second felt like an eternity. My hands trembled as I stuffed what little I could into the bag. I could hear Samuel in the other room, still fuming, but I knew I had a chance to escape before he realized what I was doing. Quietly, I led Olivia out of the house. The cold night air hit us as we stepped outside, but I didn't stop to look back. My heart raced, adrenaline pumping through me as I fumbled with the keys and got Olivia into the car. We drove away in silence, Olivia clutching her teddy bear tightly in the back seat. My mind was a blur of fear, anger, and relief all at once. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back, not after what had happened. We reached my parents' house after what felt like hours. The familiar warmth of their home wrapped around us as my mother opened the door, concern etched on her face. "Rebecca, what happened?" she asked, pulling me into a tight embrace. I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. "It's Samuel," I choked out. "He's gone too far this time." I recounted everything, the gambling, the threats, the violence. My mother held me close, stroking my hair as I cried, while my father paced the room, anger simmering in his eyes. "You and Olivia are staying here," he said firmly. "We'll deal with Samuel. He won't come near you again." The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't let this go on. Samuel had crossed a line, and I needed to take action, not just for me, but for Olivia. I contacted a lawyer to begin the divorce process and to file for full custody of my daughter. But that wasn't enough. I needed to ensure Samuel paid for what he had done. I called the police and reported the abuse, recounting every detail of that terrifying night. The investigation began almost immediately. The police took my statement seriously, and soon they were gathering evidence to build a case against Samuel. My lawyer, Jenna Parker, was sharp and experienced. She reassured me that we had a strong case, and as the days went on, I began to feel a glimmer of hope. But I knew that facing Samuel in court wouldn't be easy. As the weeks passed, the case against Samuel grew. My neighbors, who had overheard the fights and witnessed my bruises, came forward with their testimonies. Jenna hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Samuel's gambling debts, and what they uncovered shocked me even more. Samuel wasn't just gambling, he was in debt to some dangerous people, and his reckless behavior had put our family at risk. Every new piece of evidence felt like a knife in my heart, but it also strengthened my resolve. I was going to fight for my daughter's future. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. My parents came with me for support, and Jenna stood by my side as we entered the courtroom. Samuel sat on the other side, his face cold and expressionless, but I could see the anger simmering just beneath the surface. Beside him sat Laura, who had always defended him, no matter how badly he behaved. Her smirk was infuriating, but I focused on what mattered, getting justice for Olivia and me. Jenna presented our case with precision, laying out the evidence piece by piece. She started with Samuel's gambling addiction, the $50,000 he had lost, and the debts. The testimonies of our neighbors painted a grim picture. They described the shouting matches, the slammed doors, and the signs of abuse they had witnessed over the years. My injuries, captured in photographs, were displayed for all to see, clear proof of the violence Samuel had worked so hard to conceal. His lawyer attempted to brush everything aside, claiming Samuel never meant to hurt me and insisting his gambling addiction was just a passing issue. But the overwhelming evidence, from documents to witness testimonies, left no room for doubt. Each piece exposed Samuel's true nature. I watched as his confidence crumbled, piece by piece. Then came my turn to testify. My hands shook as I approached the stand, but this was my moment to tell the truth. I recounted everything, starting from the first time Samuel had dismissed my feelings to the night he tied me up and poured water over me in a fit of rage. I spoke about the fear that consumed me daily, the constant dread I lived with, not just for myself, but for Olivia too. "I just want to protect my daughter," I said, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "Samuel is a danger to both of us, and I can't let him continue hurting us." The courtroom was eerily silent as I finished. I glanced over at Samuel, whose expression was now unreadable, and then at the judge, who sat back, deep in thought. Her stern face reflected the weight of the evidence, the testimonies, and the photographs. The tension in the room was palpable, as we all waited for her decision. My heart raced, my entire body tense, as if everything I had endured, every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of fear, was leading to this moment. Finally, the judge spoke. Her voice was calm but resolute. After reviewing the evidence and hearing the testimonies, it is clear that Mr. Samuel Carter has engaged in both physical and emotional abuse against Mrs. Rebecca Carter. The evidence also confirms his reckless gambling habits and the financial harm inflicted upon his family. This behavior is unacceptable, and I find Mr. Carter guilty of domestic abuse and aggravated assault. My heart skipped a beat. It was real. Samuel's face was pale, devoid of emotion, as the judge continued. Given the severity of Mr. Carter's actions and the clear danger posed to Mrs. Carter and their daughter, Olivia, I am sentencing Mr. Carter to 10 years in prison. Full custody of Olivia will be awarded to Mrs. Rebecca Carter, and Mr. Carter will have no legal rights to contact his daughter during his imprisonment. The weight that had suffocated me for years lifted in an instant. Samuel was going to prison. Olivia and I were free. I glanced at my lawyer, Jenna, who gave me a small, reassuring smile. "You did it, Rebecca," she whispered. Across the room, Samuel sat motionless, his sister Laura beside him, her smug expression replaced with shock. But none of it mattered anymore. Samuel no longer had power over us. As I walked out of the courtroom into the bright sunlight, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, feeling the tension finally release from my body. My parents rushed toward me, wrapping me in their arms. "It's over," I whispered, my voice breaking. "He's gone." My father held me close, his eyes filled with tears. "We are so proud of you, Rebecca. You did what you had to do. Now you and Olivia can move forward." Over the following weeks, I began the process of rebuilding our lives. Olivia and I stayed with my parents as I searched for a new place. With Jenna's help, the divorce was finalized, and I joined a support group for survivors of domestic abuse. The stories of the women I met, their strength and resilience, filled me with hope. Together, we shared our pain, our fears, and eventually, our victories. I no longer felt alone. One afternoon, after dropping Olivia off at her new preschool, I found the perfect apartment. It wasn't big, but it was ours, a place to start fresh, free from the ghosts of our past. Moving in felt like a new chapter, a chance to rebuild from the ground up. I decorated Olivia's room with her favorite colors, filling it with her beloved books and toys. Watching her laugh and play in this new, safe space warmed my heart. Each night, as I tucked Olivia into bed, she would ask, "Are we really safe, Mommy?" And each night, I would smile and say, "Yes, sweetheart. We are safe now." Life slowly returned to normal, though it was a new kind of normal, one where I no longer lived in fear, where I had the freedom to make my own choices. I found work as a graphic designer, a job that allowed me to provide for Olivia while doing something I loved. My parents remained close, their unwavering support a constant source of comfort. In the routines of everyday life, I found strength. Months later, I received a letter from the district attorney's office. Samuel had attempted to appeal his sentence, but it had been denied. He would serve his full 10 years in prison. I sat with the letter in my hands, feeling a deep sense of closure. It was truly over. Olivia and I had our peace. Our days became filled with joy, weekends at the park, quiet evenings playing games, and relishing the small moments that had once seemed so far out of reach. I no longer woke up in fear. I no longer wondered what Samuel might do next. I was free. And so was my daughter. Looking back, I could see how far we had come. The darkest parts of our past would always remain a part of our story, but they no longer defined us. We were moving forward, building a life filled with love, hope, and safety. Watching Olivia grow, her laughter infectious, her energy boundless, I knew that every fight, every tear, every courageous decision I had made had been worth it. I had reclaimed my life. I was no longer just a victim. I was a survivor. And our future was bright.